Hello, I think I'm live. Welcome to today's live stream. It's a pleasure to be here and to be able to draw together. It's always super fun, and I'm happy to see that there's a few people here. You can chime in the chat and let me know where you're from, and whether you're a participant in the Calligraphy Pen Portraiture class. That would be interesting to know, because we're going to be doing a feedback session after the portrait drawing, which we're about to do. So that would be fun. Ruth sent me a piece to look at of Henry and Padma. There's a 2-page composition, which was the second and third lesson from the class. And so we'll be having a look at this in detail and having a look at how Ruth handled it. And it's going to be a feedback which will just be looking at the measurement and a fairly objective look at how we measure by eye and how we recognize the things that don't line up quite right, which is an ongoing challenge. And I hope it will be helpful to see the way you can start to look at things, and if something's not quite right, to start to train your eye to recognize what it is exactly that could be changed and worked with. So I'm going to be working with my calligraphy pen. I have a few different pens here, and I found my dip pens before I used fountain pen calligraphy pens. I worked with these dip pens a lot. I don't know, is it going to show you that? Got this autofocus, and I find it pretty unreliable. This camera, I have a super cool camera, but sometimes it focuses on the people behind me, and sometimes it focuses up real close. We'll see. But yeah, these are pretty cool. I used these a lot before I started using the fountain pen. Really great dip pens and wonderful for using with homemade ink. Hi Deb from Minnesota. Paston from Cornwall, Barbara from around the corner in Germany, Ikuden from Denmark. It's lovely to have you here with me. So maybe you have seen in my Instagram stories, I put the reference photo that we'll be working from. I'll show that to you now. This is Gustavo, who I met last year. I painted a mural in Göttingen. Hi Ruth, Ruth's here, awesome. I'm super happy that you sent through your work for us to look at later. So we'll be checking that out. So yeah, this is Gustavo. Gustavo's originally from Colombia and lives in Göttingen, as do I. And Gustavo's an independent journalist, which I think is super fascinating, because he's just he gets out and about. He just gets out there with his phone and a microphone and interviews people whenever something's interesting happening. And he's traveling a lot as well. It's not just in Göttingen. But yeah, he's been living in Göttingen and basically covering whatever happens here. And he's got a Facebook page where he goes live, and then his interviews go live on his page. They're super interesting. And I climbed up the scaffolding with this mural that I did, climbed up there with Gustavo last year in November, and he interviewed me about the work and the process of getting to know the people that I was painting on the wall, because there were, I think it was 15 portraits on the facade of this house. And yeah, so I was up there with Gustavo, and then he was like, oh, do you think you could draw me? And now finally I'm getting around to doing it, so I'm super happy to have the chance to draw Gustavo. I've got the reference up here, so this may be a bit clearer. And here's just a couple examples of some calligraphy pen work. I've done these two recently, which were references from the Let's Face It year-long challenge, which I'm also a teacher in. And now, if I'm ready, we'll start by drawing Gustavo. And I think this is going to be roughly about a half-hour sketch, and then we will do the live session. And right now I'm going to open my Zoom room as well. The live feedback session. So in Zoom, wait a minute. Now I'm going to open Zoom. So if you want to get in there, there's a link down in... I wonder if this is how we're going to work with sound. We'll figure it out. This is a process. I'm figuring out how this works best, because I'm really keen to do lots of live streams and to do live things where there are actually people in Zoom and there are people watching on YouTube. It gets recorded. Everyone can draw along. So now I have my Zoom room open. If you want to jump in there, you can. It's going to be most relevant when we get to the feedback session, I think. But as we're drawing along, drawing Gustavo now, you're also welcome to be there. And then we'll be able to, when we do the feedback session, be face to face. Here comes Ruth, who shared some work to feedback. Awesome. And Penny, I'll just let you in. And so anyone else who wants to get into the Zoom room and sit and draw together, see a couple of friendly faces if you like, feel free to turn on your cameras, by the way. There's a link in the description which says Tuesday sketch session, which everyone's invited to, and you can check that out. The link down there will get you into the Zoom room, and then we'll be able to sit and draw together. And now we're about to start drawing. If you're in the Zoom room, if you've got headphones, that would be awesome, because otherwise I hear myself talking and it can be a bit distracting. But welcome. It's nice to have you here. And let's draw Gustavo. So I have this wonderful Herlitz 1.8 millimeter calligraphy pen, and we'll just get straight to it. So for those who are familiar with my classes and instruction, I love drawing by observation. I don't do preliminary drawings much. Sometimes I do if I really, like if I have a commission and it's got to be spot on, then often I'll do a preliminary drawing. But I really love the life and the element of error that comes into just doing it directly and doing it by hand. And ink is such a wonderful medium to work in, because you've really got to focus, because you can't change much once it's down. So just going to get started, get into the zone. And yeah, once again, it's awesome to have you all here. And if you have any questions, anything you want to say, pop that in the chat and I will address it whenever I can. Oh, here's a couple of other people coming into the Zoom room. Welcome. And all right, let's start drawing, see how we go. Okay. It's big multitasking challenge for me. Hi Anina, Ruth, Penny, and Complex Number. Welcome to the Zoom room. Let's finally get drawing. So there's this wonderful, like I just pick like what I'm drawn to in the beginning, like what's catching my eye, what do I want to start working with, and in this case, the shape of the hat, like the bottom edge where the hat is sitting just atop the head, is really, I don't know, feels like a nice, really bold place to start. And I've got my reference lined up right next to the paper. This is Hanamüller Nostalgie paper, which looks like this. And it simplifies things when you can't see me. In the Zoom room, you can just see me, right?
Yeah, we don't see the reference or the paper.
Okay. I'll see if I can screen share something here. If it's a bit tricky. This is for the people in Zoom. If it's possible to look at YouTube and Zoom at the same time, it's kind of, I've got my screen split up, but I will.
Okay, I'll do that.
I can do this, and now you can see the workspace, right? Awesome, cool. So you'll be able to see this, or you can look on YouTube. Yeah, cool. So this dark bottom shape, I really love the kind of border of the face, having the dark scarf here and this rim under the bottom of the hat. So that's just caught my eye, and that's where I'm going to start. And that's often how I start. I just like what's grabbing my attention, and I just start there. Having the reference right next to the paper, it helps line it up. and you just kind of eyeball it and try and go from there to over here. And you can be as kind of as careful or as courageous as you like. Like you can really take care lining things up, or just kind of go for it and get drawing. And yeah, I say again and again, it's super important to really focus on what you've got in your reference. So you keep being really attentive to what's in the reference, more so than what you're putting down on the paper. So just kind of today I'll set up a few of the big kind of basic shapes and start filling them in. It's also not really a systematic approach to the way I set up a drawing. Sometimes I just start somewhere and spread out. But let's do this hat, and we'll kind of set up the frame around the face and then work into it. That may be interesting for today. Yeah, so it's almost been a year since I painted this mural. I have a video up on my YouTube channel as well, where it's a time lapse of some of the process of painting that. It's a pretty cool project. Now I'm gonna come over to this side of the face, not the ear side, the other side, and just try and mimic the outline. There's some nice kind of subtle changes in direction, and just kind of get that profile. This is something which I think just getting a profile line is a super cool thing to practice. You could just, if you're looking for an exercise to train your eye, just drawing these kind of edge lines, profiles of faces, that's a really cool thing to practice, and just trying to mimic these subtle shifts and changes in line. I said I was going to start with big shapes, so I'm very tempted to dive into the eye here, but I'll keep kind of working my way around. Scarf shape here. And for anyone who is in the Calligraphy Pen Portraiture class, if you want feedback on a specific piece, it may be a bit tricky now, like on the fly, to get it organized, but you could still send me a message with a photo of the piece from the class that you'd like me to look at, and once we're done with this, we'll take a look at those. And feel free to ask any questions you have. I know in the classes, a lot of people had trouble getting the ink to flow with their calligraphy pens. So that's, I guess that would be a good thing to address now. Is there anyone here who's had trouble with their calligraphy pen? Because it seems to be it's been a common challenge that people have had, that the ink's not flowing properly. So just to kind of touch upon that. Yeah, by pressing down the tines, you release the ink by putting a bit of pressure down, and it can take a little bit for a bit of use to get the pen kind of broken in, I guess, to get the ink flowing. And I find sometimes that tapping there's a reservoir inside the pen that needs to fill with ink. You can see it really well in the parallel pen. So this is the Pilot parallel pen. There's this reservoir here which needs to fill with ink. And if that hasn't filled, it takes a bit before the ink kind of flows into it. So just filling a page with lines before getting started on a portrait can also be a good way to kind of get the ink flowing before diving into some serious work. So here I've got this basic supporting shapes kind of set up. If at any stage anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. And now, so as we've drawn all of these, we use each thing that we've drawn to give us orientation to find where we put the next feature. And with these like articles of clothing, it's not so important. You can be pretty loose and relaxed about it because you don't have to worry too much about getting a likeness and having things in exactly the right spot. But it's they're also just a good way to start up, like a bit of a preliminary drawing in the sense that we start to loosen up. Practicing looking at the relationship between the shapes that we're drawing, and then as we come to the face, we've already started drawing a bit, and then I get a bit of the feeling that it's like we've warmed up a bit. Someone said with their final image in the class that they learned from it that they shouldn't start with the focus first, and that's interesting. The idea that getting warmed up first can really help you kind of ease into the drawing. And I feel like drawing these supporting areas just to get something down on the paper, that kind of helps to warm up as we then move into the main event, which is the portrait. And here having these indentations like at where the eye is and where we line up with the hat here, we've got a few marks put down which are going to help us as we explore our way through the portrait, already having those marks made and using it to line up and to guide our process through the drawing. I'll just Marzia, I'll just mute you. I can hear the TV, but if you would like to ask a question, feel free to unmute and ask. The eyes, the whole area around the eyes and the bridge of the nose is really interesting space. I'll just make this a bit bolder here. Like finding that distance between the corners of the eyes. It's a pretty important step. Like if you get that right, or it can be really helpful in getting the likeness right. And there are so many subtle measurements that if we can accurately gauge where we want to put our marks, it's really going to help to get close to a likeness. Hello, Shannon, and hello everyone else who's watching at the moment. If you have a moment to give me a thumbs up and a comment in the chat, that would be amazing. Let me know who's watching and where you are. What you're drawing with, I'd love to know. So this is I'm drawing with calligraphy pen, but you can all use whatever you like. Great to have you here, Shannon. I recorded a chat drawing session with Shannon recently, and there'll be another one coming up soon. So thanks for getting on to me about following up on that, Shannon. It's always good to have a bit of a friendly nudge, a friendly pester. That was Shannon's words, not mine, but I'll go with it. Have a really great wrinkles. At the corner of the eyes here, always so expressive. It's wonderful to capture those. And here where we have, so I'm going to darken this up. I feel like I'm going pretty light. It'd be good to get a bit bolder. And I think by just putting down a few marks to kind of have a look, where's all this shadow going to be, and filling that in a bit, I'll start to get a bit more courageous, because I feel like I have to balance it out. And it's interesting. I often catch myself doing this, where I love the boldness and the broad lines of the calligraphy pen, but I'll often find myself like quite far into the drawing. It's like, I haven't used the broad edge of the pen yet. Like, I really feel like I'm carefully searching for the lines that I'm putting down, and then I have to remind myself why I like this drawing tool so much, and then really use it. So I'm gonna just go around and put a few more bolder marks down. Get a bit loosen up a bit. And these bold marks, it's interesting because I always catch myself doing it. That I often I'll go on with all these careful fine lines, and then just pick a moment where I decide to go bold. It'll be an interesting exercise for myself to do more practice, just going straight to the broad edge. Hi, Inika. Barbara, you've got parallel pen. That's awesome. And you from Gouda. Awesome. Always, I have a lot of nice memories of the Netherlands, and been to Gouda. So it's nice to have you here, Yul. Of the people who are in the Calligraphy Pen Portraiture class, it'd be interesting to know how far you are. I know that some people have finished and some people haven't started yet, and I think Ruth just finished lessons 2 and 3, which is awesome. It'd be great to have a look at those pieces later. Kind of tiptoeing around the mouth here. Speaking of being bold, making bold choices. Teeth and an open mouth smile can be an intimidating thing to draw. And I find it really helpful to look at the negative shapes. Like there are these really nice shadows between the teeth, and at the edge of that edgemost tooth there. Just finding a subtle way, like there's so much potential detail in the teeth, but finding a really subtle, minimal way to communicate the toothiness of the grin is an interesting challenge. And I think if you squint at the image, you'll see you don't really notice so much the lines between the teeth, which is like sometimes we'll have a tendency to draw those outlines, but looking at the group of teeth as like one shape can be a really helpful way to simplify and draw it. And then in areas where you feel like it is really clearly dark and bold, then you can really get in there and put a few deliberate bolder marks in, or put a few little subtle marks in, whatever you kind of feel it's asking for. But you can get away with drawing less, and it can sometimes kind of add more to the drawing. And anything that's kind of challenging to draw. Like drawing in ink is I just always find like it's really good practice. I'm seeing things now as I'm drawing, talking so much, and like proportional things that are going a bit awry, a bit wrong. But I think I put the eyes a bit high, or maybe the nose and mouth is actually a bit low. Yeah, that could have been a bit higher, but it's there now, so I just got to roll with it and keep drawing. And it's, I think it's good to then just go with it, keep drawing, and we don't have, it doesn't have to be perfect every time. And when we start to catch the mistakes or errors, or maybe it's going to turn out being like, oh, that quirky distortions might be something that we enjoy. And if it's not, then we can be like, oh, okay, next time I need to really focus a bit more when I do that. That particular area, particularly if it's something that you often find yourself kind of misjudging the distance of particular proportions. And I think it's also, I feel like it's good for me to be like, it'd be good to keep doing this more often, to do instructional drawings while talking and talking through the process as I'm live. Something I still feel like I'm really in the early stages of doing this live streaming thing, because it's a whole different thing where I want to see what people are talking about and make sure that everything's working, and also try and do a cool portrait. So yeah, more live streams is it's something I've been wanting to do for years, and now I feel like it's happening. So it's I'm super happy to have you here drawing with me, and there are going to be many more live streams in future, live drawing sessions together. I want to block in the scarf, put a bit more weight. This border, I've got this shadow shape, can come back here and fine tune things a bit, but just to give a sense of the weight of, just visually the weight of the scarf below the portrait. Like I feel like it's holding the cap, and the scarf are holding Gustavo's face so nicely here, and just getting those big dark shapes set up. It's gonna make the composition look feel a bit more grounded, and then we can keep going back into it and fine-tuning things and adding things. Deb Peter says I'm newer to ink and not sure how to do light shadows with pen and ink. That's a very, very good thing to address, and I've started doing it a little bit. You can just see some of the parallel hatching here, which is suggesting some of the lighter shadowing. I'm going to go in and do some more modeling and some more hatching in the face and try and keep it fairly light. Barbara, does the parallel pen ink not dry on the paper? This one I did with a parallel pen, and I definitely had to like leave it some time to dry, because I went pretty dark with it. But yeah, it definitely sits on the paper for a while and you need to kind of float your hand above the drawing as you're moving around. There's something with this pen as well. You can see this is quite wet, and depending how much ink you're putting down, it can get really, really wet. So you kind of have to strategically move around the page, trying not to smudge ink everywhere. Yeah, so Deb, if you're filling in darker shapes, like you can be quite quite heavy-handed and bold with the hatching. And here is also in the scarf is really, it's not that important. Like I don't feel it has the same value as the face in the overall composition, so you can be like pretty loose with it. And then I'll take much more care when I'm hatching in lighter shadows in more detailed areas. And this could be blocked in a lot more as well. The parallel pen would be good. It's I need to refill it. But there's a nice sense of texture to this loose hatching, I think, as well. Has this nice knit and bit of a textured feel to it. And I'm just making the bottom edge a bit darker, even though this is all fairly solid black in what I'm looking at, just to imply that sense of the form wrapping around below the scarf here. There's a lot of stuff going on in the jacket that I'm not really too interested in and putting into it. I want to focus more on the portrait. So now would be a good time to talk about lighter shadows. So we obviously have this directional light, can start up in the hat, like this bottom edge, to do some lighter spaced out hatching. And I tend to not cross hatch too much, but do a lot of vertical parallel hatching. That spacing out your hatching like this gives that subtler shaded feel rather than blocking in shadow. So you can see here this quite broad hatching. I feel like this could be quite a bit darker, so I'll add some more finer hatching in here as well. But you'll start to see the play between different kinds of hatching, that some of it's really loose and broad edged, and then getting on the fine edge of the pen to do some of the lighter hatching. And so we have this. If you can just look at the reference image, and if you squint at it, you can kind of notice, okay, it's with the subtler areas within the face, it's a bit trickier, but you can see there's this like top-down light, and because of the shape of the cheeks, you see there's the shadow below the cheek, there's a highlight on top because the bright sky is there. And so this shadow shape underneath, I'll start hatching in with an open edge to the shape, because there's a really soft transition between the shadow on the bottom side of the cheek and the highlight above. But then below the eye, it's also, so here is this highlight area in here, in this area that I've stretched out too far in my drawing, but we'll just work with how it is. And you can see that I'll just switch off my overlay image here so you can see what I'm pointing to. This highlight, which is like the light from the sky, which is just coming over the rim of the hat. You've got the highlight coming across the cheek, and then it's also dancing across the nose here. Really nice, bold rim light on the edge of the nose here. But there's kind of like this band of highlight across here. So I'm going to leave that really open and light, and want to do a lot more modeling of hatching around the bottom side below that. And there's also, so anything from the face that's facing in that direction, like the chin here, the upper lip, across here, that's all facing up towards the sky, and that's going to be lighter. And by putting in, so I'm not outlining solid forms, but doing this kind of open-ended hatching is a way to put in that lighter shading without it being too bold, because that can be a huge challenge, especially with a broad edge tool. It's great how bold it can be, but if you want to work on more subtle modeling, then it takes a bit of practice and subtlety. Like I just right now, just that little shape here below the lip, I just enjoy that, the kind of contrast between the light area above and below. There's the underside of the nose here, which we can fill in with some of this hatching. And anywhere where you can discern that subtle shadow, you can just put in some open-edged hatching. What I mean by open-edged is, like, sometimes I will draw a shape like I did with the scarf, where, like, imagining I'm doing this shadow shape here, like sometimes I may draw, I hope you can see that. Yeah, you can kind of see it. So that would kind of be the shadow shape, and you can draw that shape beforehand and draw any shapes. And you could imagine this is with ink as well, but on this paper it would not dry, so I've just got pencil. And then if I went and filled it in like this, I would have a closed shape, which this closed edge would be too hard for this transition in the face here, because it's such a subtle, gentle transition from the shadow to light side. So it's open-edged rather than closing the shape. So depending on what kind of transitions you see and the way the shapes, the light and shadow meet, you can do closed or open shapes. Like here at the rim, it's a really clear closed shape up at the top of the hat, but as it comes down on the bottom side, it's softer, so trying to kind of keep it a bit open. And here's an example, because this is quite a dark shadow. So that's really like heavy, and here we have the lighter shadow, which is nice and light and open. So I hope that's a pretty direct and helpful response to your, was it even a question or statement, Deb, about the uncertainty of how to do light shadows. Blackie Francis, Barbara saying I have to do a much embracing of the quirkiness with this piece. That's great. It's good to know. I think it's good for all of us to know that sometimes it's like, oh, it doesn't always work out how maybe we envision it, or how it could be. I actually have talked to Lewis, great Deb. Lewis was our first model on the first page of the zine, and I was chatting with Lewis recently, who's also participating in the course and also an artist. Be sure to check out Lewis. And Lewis had the idea that after the completion of the zine, so everyone's finished and there's like this final image and it's like, okay, it's done. And Lewis had this pretty cool idea to then for everyone to do like a bonus portrait, uninstructed, to see how your decision making has changed over throughout the course, and I thought that was a really cool idea, and I asked Lewis, but I haven't got his answer yet. I thought maybe we could do another Lewis portrait. I'll post in the class about that, because the first portrait of Lewis, it was really like finding shape, starting with the pencil drawing, and I feel like it was really quite a journey and quite a steep learning curve throughout the course, from going to the preliminary drawing to just going straight to ink. And it'll be interesting to revisit Lewis's face and to see how everyone goes with that. So I have another really cool photo of Lewis. Once I get his blessing, presuming and hoping that I do, I'll share it in the class group and can maybe do that. No pressure, Lewis, if you're here or if you're watching after the fact. Okay. Just checking in. I think I've been drawing for about half an hour now. And it's quite dark around the whole eye area is actually really like kind of in the shadow of the brim of the hat. Can darken this up a bit. I feel like it still needs a bit more contrast. There's so I was just thinking some bolder lines at the edge of the face could be really cool. Like this graphic outline look. Once there's this general overall building up of the image, and at some point it's like, okay, I can check in again, see how things are working together, and if something needs to, like if there are some places that need a bit more attention, like because that initial subtle drawing, the careful drawing that I was starting with, start to get a bit lost at this stage, and because I started subtly, I feel like there are some areas where I can come back now and kind of reinforce some decisions, make things a bit bolder, where it's like around the eye area, things are a bit lost in the overall image. This upper lip could be kind of muddled a bit more. So I know that when people are drawing along, they generally don't have their fingers free to chat in the chat, but what's everyone up to this weekend? We celebrated our firstborn child's 9th birthday yesterday, and he had a sleepover party and invited 9 kids, and we went for what do you call it even in English, a Nachtwanderung. So we went walking at night with the kids, and it was dark, and we took torches, and like real flame torches as well. That was pretty cool. And went on a treasure hunt, and it was a Pokemon themed party. It was all very exciting, but the whole family today has just been like pretty tired. I feel like especially me and Kira, tired parents. But the kids did pretty well. But yeah, sleepover party. They obviously weren't very interested in going to sleep. But it was fun. Felt like, even though it was such a big deal, like having so many kids over, it was fairly low key compared to some other birthday parties we've done. Because they came over in the evening, and we ate together, watched a Pokemon movie with the beamer on the wall. For a lot of the kids, I think for Aiken, I don't think he's ever been to the cinema. So having it projected on the wall, and we don't watch that much, so it was really like, wow, this big thing. And it was really quite adorable seeing all these 8 and 9-year-olds sitting together, excited, taking on a visually beautiful, emotional journey through this Pokemon world. And then, of course, once we finished and we went for our walk in the darkness, they had all transformed into Pokemon. They were pretty wild. So we walked through the darkness together. That was cool. So what's everyone else been up to so far today or this weekend? So since the moment where I was like going to add a bit more boldness and touch up a few areas, I feel like it's already... I keep squinting at my drawing. It's like, does it look good when I've got my eyes almost closed? And if you've got a strong... It's this super convenient inbuilt filter that we have. Like, if it feels like it's a strong image, even when you can't really see it properly because you've got your eyes almost closed, I feel like that can be a really helpful gauge. And even still, but before I felt like the eyes were almost invisible when I squinted, and it's still quite light. So I will focus a bit more around the eyes, and maybe with these awesome wrinkles here, convey some more of that joy. Gustavo, I think it's so cool that we haven't spoken enough. I hope to be able to spend some more time with Gustavo. But it's so cool that he's doing this independent journalism, and he sees so much. Like if something's happening, I know there've been like demonstrations in Berlin, so he'll just like jump on the train and then he goes to Berlin and goes and interviews people, and whatever's happening in Göttingen, he's there interviewing people, checking it out. Like he must see so much. And just interesting looking at the eyes and thinking, what have these eyes seen? Like so well traveled and meet so many people, and really nice to see that. Yeah, it's just such a lovely, joyful character. So it's nice to try and capture some of that in his expression here. Okay, so oh cool. Gorza's starting to paint a mural at the back of the house. That's so cool, Gorza. I'd love to see it. What are you going to be painting on your house? I recently painted the back of my house just white. It was like off-white, kind of dirty from I don't know how many years of living, and just freshened it up a bit just a couple months ago. I was like, I could have painted something, but for now it's white. Maybe make a mural on my own house someday. Well, we're renting here, so I don't know. It'll be adventurous. Various discussions with various results. Parallel discussions. With various people. Oh, that was just a comment from Shannon. Someday I'll figure out, there's a way to be able to bring up the comments that people are putting in the chat and put them up in the screen. But because I use OBS, which is an open source free software, you have to figure everything out by watching lots of tutorial videos. I haven't figured that out yet. All right, I think for now, I still see, I think we could probably, what All right, I feel like I need to wrap this up. What would be a few final things? I feel like I left a lot of the top, like the top third or the top half of the face. I left quite light, although like you hardly notice the highlight on the cheeks. So I decided to add a bit more loose hatching around, especially around the top of the face. And blocking a bit more up here. Yeah, so we're about to do a feedback session for one of the pieces from the zine. Ruth shared a drawing with me, and so this is going to be interesting. So this is like the main event for a lot of people, I think, but I think this feedback session should be interesting too. And it's I haven't really done, I called it a critique when I started talking about it, but I'm not going to be doing any kind of subjective judging of the merit of the piece. It's going to be looking at measurement and the way things were drawn under my instruction. So really going to focus a lot on measurement. Ruth, feel free to ask anything when we get to it. And yeah, it's going to be interesting because I'm on YouTube, but I've got Zoom open as well. So anyone who wants to jump into Zoom, the link is below in the description if you're on YouTube, where it says join my Tuesday drawing sessions, which you can also do. Come draw with us on Tuesday. But it's the same link to the Zoom room. I feel like this is pretty much done. I hope everyone who's drawing along feels some sense of completion. I will... Yeah, if you want to, you can come back, pause this video, or rewatch the whole thing and look at the reference image, or grab a screenshot of it if you feel like you'd like to spend some more time with Gustavo. And I forgot to mention in the description, but on my Instagram I did, you can tag Gustavo as well, Gustavo Unterwegs. I'm not sure if he speaks English, Spanish and German. But I'm sure he would love to see your drawings as well. And you can use the hashtag drawingwithdylan if you're posting anywhere on social media, and tag me. I'd love to see it. And I'll share it in my stories too. All right, I feel like now it's time to put the pen down on this piece. And if I did it again, I'd bring the eyes and nose a bit closer. Maybe make the smile a bit wider. And now I'm going to start trying and get into the kind of analytic mindset, because we're going to do this feedback session, and I want to kind of see what things could be done. How can I improve my own work? It's interesting sometimes to you finish something and you may like it, you may be a bit dissatisfied, and then to look at the things like, oh, how could this have been a bit better, and where can I kind of make choices differently? How can I improve this piece, or how can I approach it differently next time I get into a portrait? Deb, you can share on Instagram. If you're in the Calligraphy Pen Portraiture class, I'd love you to share it there in the Facebook group, Instagram, or TikTok. I'm on TikTok as well. But definitely, if you're in the Calligraphy Pen Portraiture class, share there. Anyone here who's drawing along, that would be cool for people to see. But Instagram's kind of like still the main event. That's where I share most stuff. And all right, keep fiddling around, but we'll lay this to the side because I would like to have a look now at this piece that Ruth did, which was for lesson 2 and 3. Thank you very much again, Gustavo. I will add Gustavo's information to the description of the YouTube video. Anyone who wants to join us in Zoom, feel free, because now we'll get into this feedback session. I will get my reference up over here. So here is Ruth's piece. Thank you very much for sharing, Ruth. And for those who are not familiar with the reference, it was this one of Henry and Padma. Super fun reference to work from. And now we'll have a look at Ruth's piece. Ruth, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. You're in the Zoom room, but there's also the YouTubers here. So either in the chat, Deb, we're on Facebook. Yeah, I just mentioned, but if you were in the... Oh, I'll get rid of Gustavo here. If you're in the class, post it there, or in the Carabolic art community would be a good place as well. I'll just get rid of Gustavo's reference so you can see what I'm looking at.
So I've never done anything like this before.
Okay, it's my first time doing this like this, but yeah, feel free, speak up. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I've never done pen and ink like this. I did calligraphy like 20, 30 years ago, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a little bit of watercolor portrait like 20 some years ago, but just for like a year. And then I went into oils and mainly did landscapes. So, but it's just, this is the funnest class I've ever taken.
Awesome. I'm glad you're having fun.
It was so intimidating when it started because I go on the Facebook page and people were like, "Oh yeah, I finished it already." You know, it was like the first day.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, "What?"
Yeah. I was also amazed. I think it was just like it took a few days for the first person to finish all 13 portraits. I was surprised. Very, very dedicated, or yeah, lots of binge watching of the tutorials.
It's intimidating.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're into it.
Yeah. So when I started, I thought I was going to have to grid, but then I just did pencil following you, and today I just went right into it with ink, and I mean it didn't turn out great, but it was fun.
Yeah,
And
awesome.
I did the fourfold too. It
Okay.
was too awkward to take a photo of it.
Cool. So you just did this today?
No.
Okay.
I did this maybe 2 weeks ago.
All right. Cool.
3 weeks ago.
Yeah. So is there anything we'll have a look at Henry first. Do you just
His proportions are a little, I made his face too wide and too short.
Yeah, there are. So I'll just kind of go through a few things I can draw on top with this. So there may be things that you see. I think we see a lot once it's finished, and if you put it next to the reference, then you can you've stepped back from it. Like if you drew it a couple of weeks ago and you come look back and you start to see things and recognize what exactly it is. But I'll put a layer on top and just do some try and do some subtle kind of lines on top. But something that stands out to me is this is quite a straight edge that we have here. Whoops. See if this is a good... Can see this color? Yeah. So over on this side is it's not quite vertical, but it's quite straight. And that's the first kind of thing that stands out to me. And I need a drink. I'll just kind of list a few things that jump out at me. If there's something that you see, you can mention it. But I know, like I thought this would be a cool idea to offer this kind of feedback session, because I remember drawing things and I could not, when I would look at it and look at the reference, I couldn't, for the life of me, I couldn't see why it didn't look like the reference. And so I hope this will be helpful in that way, that we can have a look at what things could be a bit different, and that's something that we can definitely train, that kind of looking and reflecting upon the decisions that we made and how it could be more kind of authentic to the original image. So yeah, I hope that will be helpful. And if you have any questions or anything you'd like to say, feel free to ask.
Very helpful. I love it. Go for it.
Cool. I just need to have a drink. Anyone who's still watching, I just noticed like half the people left after we finished the drawing, which is cool, because this is a pretty niche thing. Say hello, because I'd like to know who's still here. And if you haven't already, then I'd love a like on YouTube, because then it kind of pushes the video. Hi. Nice to have you with us as well. Marzia?
This is Marzi from class.
Marzi, that's great. Thank you for being here. Yeah, so this is interesting for me, because this is the first time I've done this kind of draw over feedback thing. So I'll just point out a few things that kind of grab my attention. I find glasses, I keep talking about it, glasses are super helpful to get the orientation through the drawing. And something here like this shape is really great. It's flattened out a bit on this side. And I know that that would be a bit more of a curve over here. And there's often decisions that we make that influence the next drawing. Like maybe it was the eyebrow was already there, and then the space, you need to leave some space between. But there would be a bit of a, I think there's that shape in the glasses is something. There's a bit of a tendency to slant down in this direction, which is in this direction, which I feel is a bit more pronounced in your drawing than here. And these kind of things, I'm hoping it's helpful to hear, because I know that often we have like a tendency to repeat the same kind of things, and it's not with everything, but there's a certain kind of skewing like going on in this direction a bit. And if you start to notice like, oh, that's something that I do in lots of my drawings, then you can consciously try and change things a bit. Yeah. So if that, like this edge of the line, when we were drawing Gustavo, also started with that outline edge of the face. And if you can set up like looking at the original and then looking at the drawing and setting that up in a way that you can kind of echo, try to reproduce that contour, that line over here, then that can set you up for having things in alignment throughout. But I notice here the nose is in a pretty good space in position to the eye, and the mouth alignment is pretty good. That edge of the face is something that's really quite noticeable. So it's awesome. Like I just love seeing everyone doing the work and practicing, and I'm so glad that you shared this and that we had the chance to look through it together. And I'm sure, like usually, like if we drew this again, if you drew it again, or if I did again, then we'd also perhaps make different choices based upon what we learned throughout the process. I feel like that's the biggest thing that I noticed that could really make a difference towards like the likeness and overall shape. And yeah, with that, the downward slant in this direction, I feel like this eye would be a bit higher, but that's kind of in relation to this whole edge. Like everything, if that was a little higher over here, would be kind of balanced out in a way. I feel like maybe that's the main things this kind of jawline, and if everything over here was a little bit higher. But it's cool that you just went with it, kept drawing. This shape goes out a little bit further here.
Yeah, it's like his forehead is too short, and then there's too much space between the bottom of his nose and his mouth. His face is too short and it's too wide.
Yeah,
But I was happy with it.
Yeah.
For the first start.
Yeah, it's great. And
Could be worse.
it could always be worse. Yeah, it's cool.
And I had fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, and the way that you did the hatching and implemented the hatching, I think it looks really great. It fits really nicely with that. And what you mentioned about the forehead and the spacing here, I feel like the shape of the cap is kind of pushing down a bit into this area here. But it's great. Something I noticed, we'll move over to Padma now, which was really the contrast that you had here. Like if we flip back and forward between the original image, so I left out like the dark area here, but we had a lot of contrast here, which is, in your drawing of Padma, there could be a bit more contrast. Like I feel like with the Henry one, it's a really great setup of the different values and some really bold edges and contrast, and that's less so in the Padma drawing.
I felt like, especially with Henry, I felt like I had to do like so many more lines than you did.
Mm-hmm.
And doing them, it seems like when I get to the bottom of drawing the line, it kind of, my pen makes a mark, like it goes back up or something.
Oh, like a little hook, like
Yeah, and you could see that on Henry, not in her so much.
yeah.
And then just learning the whole maneuvering the pen,
Yeah.
the thin and the thick, but that's, you've been,
Yeah.
you just have to keep doing it.
Yeah, totally. I see what you mean, and yeah, I think that's just a question of practice. Like, and I can. You're right-handed, probably, yeah. Like I can just imagine that lifting and that little flick at the bottom of the line, and that's just something that I have done, and I often recommend is, and I think in one of the, like there was a materials and basics of calligraphy pen video, to just fill a page with lines, and that's something just like practicing drawing lines, parallel lines, like that's a really helpful thing, just to practice. Super basic, but just how you draw a line, and so that it has this like additional texture with that little. You can see where you're lifting off of the paper that you're just hooking up a little bit, but it's cool. There's yeah. I just saw Deb. You said you're open for critique as well. If you want to send me, we'll see how much time we have. Already been going for an hour and 10 minutes. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we'll see how we go. But you can send me either on Instagram or Facebook message if you're in the class group. You can send me the piece specific to the class that you would like me to have a look at. And now...
Is she better proportioned?
I just gotta have a bit of a look. I feel like it's the proportions are cool. It's all a little bit low. It's made the forehead like a bit bigger, I think. And it's interesting what I mentioned about Henry, that there was this kind of downward slant. It looks like the angle here is also kind of being pushed down a bit. If the glasses I'll put a drawing on top again. If there was, like here, there's more of a, like the glasses here are going in this direction. And that's something that I've also noticed myself often do, that when things are not even, like you have this frontal portrait, the way I'm looking at the camera now, that everything is quite lined up. And when things are in perspective and skewed, that I myself have noticed a tendency to flatten things out a bit. And it looks like here that there's a bit of an angle with the glasses, and you've just flattened it out a bit. So the glasses are super helpful, and I see the way that you've used it here to find your way around the drawing. And in the initial stage of putting them down, just to really pay attention to what is like the main angle, even though it has these lovely curves to the glasses. There's this throughout the reference, we kind of have a lot of areas that are a lot of lines that will be almost parallel. They are also kind of in perspective as well, but we can look at the reference like this to line up areas of the drawing. So if it had, for example, started with the glasses, which I often think is a nice starting place because it gives you can draw into it and build around it really well. If we were starting with the glasses, to really make sure that we get that subtle angle, like if it were a right angle and really horizontal, it would be like that, but it's just dropped down a bit, like it's not as flat as it is here. And I think that that would kind of set that rhythm and angle of the drawing. I think proportion wise, like the distance between the features of the face, maybe the eyes a little bit higher within the frame of the glasses, but the space from like the glasses to the nose, to the mouth and the chin, like the spacing out proportion wise of the face, that it looks pretty good. But here I see, like within the glasses in the reference, all of the information of Padma's eye is in the top half of the glasses, and here it's coming like with the, what do you call that, below the eye? When I see myself in the mirror, sometimes I think it's the bags under my eye. I don't know if there is an anatomical term for the bottom eyelid, but the shadow area here is all within the top half, and here it's just cutting down a little low, and then like just focusing on that eye area, you can kind of see that the eye, the bottom edge of the iris would be a bit higher. There's a little bit of a highlight in between there, and that's just looking at the position of the eye, where the eye sits within the frame of the glasses. That could that's something that I always find helpful, to be like, where is the eye within the frame of the glasses? That's why I love glasses so much, because they help you if you really practice and are attentive, and to see where exactly the eye is located. And I see that you've done it. It could be fine-tuned a little bit more, and starting with that the angle, which is echoing the original angle, I think it's always really helpful as well. So that's I think for the drawing, like the main thing that I'm seeing here. And I think that the contrast wise, there could be you could set up the composition really nicely by filling in more with the hair, because the hair frames the face really nicely. And so there's a lot of really nice bold line hatching. It could just be filled in even a bit more, I think, and that would frame the face really nicely.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
my pleasure. I hope that just sharing that will have you give you something to look at when you're working in future drawings to see, okay, so what was that thing with the glasses, and checking on that angle. That's something that is really can be really helpful, because both of these portraits had have a subtle angle. Like sometimes if someone's head's really tipped like this, then it's really obvious. But this is just a really quite really subtle with Padma, and a bit steeper, but still quite a shallow angle with Henry. And I think like with Henry as well, we could, if you look at that, like I talked about the rhythm on Padma's face of those kind of parallel lines, and if we had that here as well, it could be like that's the top of the glasses, there's the corner of the eye within that, the bottom of the glasses, the nose, the mouth, the chin, and that can be really helpful to see the way these things line up, and if they are parallel in the reference, which they aren't always, because maybe the glasses are not really aligned, or my nose is not really straight. So it's always important to look carefully and be attentive to the reference. But often you'll have this kind of rhythm in the face where things are kind of in a parallel alignment. And if you can check in with the reference and on your drawing, that can also be helpful to be like, oh, is that keeping to this kind of parallel rhythm that we have in the reference? That's something that I think will keep being really useful and helpful throughout the drawing, because we have that in the verticality of the face more so than across the face. But when we're looking like across the face here, we often have really nice alignment. The corner of the mouth, edge of the nose, the pupil here are like, that's a super cool thing can see here. We don't have as much of that across the face as we do up and down. But searching for the way these different things line up, like if you were to drop a line straight down, where would it be intersecting along that line? And then I feel like those are really helpful things as we draw, to be like, how do those things line up? What's parallel? Yeah. Yeah, the plumb line, that's it. Yeah. And if it won't always be vertical. Sometimes we have a beautiful frontal, like really frontal reference to look at, and sometimes it's going to be skewed. But if you then notice, okay, how are things lining up like this? So you could still, looking at me now rather than the reference, like if you can look vertically, like how does the corner of my eye, I'll make myself a bit bigger, maybe. Oh, it's going to be tricky because it's different on Zoom and YouTube, but I can make myself bigger on YouTube, or I can move away from the screen sharing now and show you myself. Yeah, so I think now you see me, and if my head is tilted and I have the plumb line really vertical on the paper, because that's one thing, you can look at the way things are vertically on the paper and how they're lining up with each other. And oh, it's weird because I've got a mirror image or not a mirror image on the screen. That's a bit weird. So I'm just imagining the paper's vertical, and okay, here, so the edge of the ear maybe lines up with the outer curve of my head here, and how does this corner line up with, like, just looking at things vertically. But then what I was just talking about there was like, how does this corner of the mouth line up with the eye and the nostril? And these are really interesting places where you can kind of check in to see how things are fitting together. And that's when so that's really helpful when it's really frontal. If you've got perspective, it can still be useful to see. It's going to be really different because the corner of the mouth and the edge of the nose may not be in alignment. But when things are turned and in an unusual kind of perspective and angle, you can still kind of find your way around, okay, what lines up with what? And I think that can be a really helpful way to find yourself or find your way around the reference in the drawing.
Thank you, that's so helpful. I wanted to ask about your Tuesday morning class. I popped in well, it's morning.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I popped in one time, but I couldn't stay, but then I was so intimidated because, so if you stay, does that mean you have to pose at some point?
Thank you for asking. No one has to do anything. You can pose, and most people do, but I have people who come who don't even speak English, and they don't really talk much then. Have people who come who don't want to be drawn, and that's fine. Sometimes they have the camera on, sometimes they leave it off. So for those who don't know, you're all welcome to join us. Every Tuesday, I host a live portrait session. We meet in Zoom and we sketch each other for 2 hours and start really loosely. So
Started out with like really, really short poses.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
you get long. Was that it?
That's it.
Like 1 minute, it
Yeah, yeah. So it starts with 30 seconds and then 1 minute, 2 minutes, 4 minutes, and 6 minutes. And so by the end of 2 hours, we've done like 26 portraits or something. And it's just really great practice for spotting all those kind of things I was just talking about, but like on the fly. So it's like you've got 30 seconds, just start drawing. So it's really great practice. And we draw each other, but if you don't want to be drawn, that's fine. As I said, no one has to do anything. So everyone's welcome. You want to come draw with me? I'd love you to. The link is in the YouTube description below here, and also in my Instagram link. And it's the best practice. I think it's great because we get to see so many faces, practice so many, doing so many portraits, and you start to see these things like the way things line up in a face or the way faces differ from each other. And there are a lot of people who come every week. Some people come only once. Some people come once a month. And when you start to see, you get to draw the same face in different kind of poses, and it's really great practice. And it's like it's my social life as well, because some of the people who come, we've been drawing since the beginning of the pandemic together, and it's just it's super focused. But it's a pretty relaxed vibe, and we chat. You don't have to chat. You can just come and draw if you like. But that's basically how that works. So it was cool that you popped in, and no one need feel intimidated. Barbara, who was here, I don't know if Barbara's still here, but Barbara, who was drawing with us, she just said on Tuesday that she was intimidated for a long time because her English she thought was not so good. It's really good, and the thing about like being seen and drawing each other. But now she said Tuesday was her 1 year anniversary, and she's been coming and drawing nearly every week with us now. And she said she wished that she hadn't been intimidated and had come sooner. So I like to think that it's a really welcoming, safe space for people to come and draw together, and everyone's welcome. No one has to do anything, and it's a really cool opportunity to hang out and draw together.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for.
Barbara's still here. Yeah, my pleasure. So whenever you have time, feel free to come join us. It's 7:30 p.m. German time, which must be 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, I guess. Because it's
I think it's 10:30.
yeah, but daylight savings is
What time is it there now?
it's almost 10 p.m.
Okay, because it's almost 1 here.
Yeah, cool. So Deb, I didn't see. Cool. Barbara says it's so wonderful. Can't Tuesday anymore without drawing with Dylan. So everyone's welcome every Tuesday to come draw with us. And for those who aren't in a sociable time zone, if you're asleep at that time, then 10 a.m. German time each Friday, first Friday of the month, we also meet and sketch together. So thank you to everyone who stuck with us all the way through this live stream. It was a pleasure hanging out and drawing together with you. And thank you, Ruth, for sharing your work with us for the first ever feedback session. I hope it was helpful for you and anyone else who is watching. And thanks to Gustavo for this joyous portrait we got to draw together. So if you're posting on social media, tag me. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, leave a comment, watch this video again and again if you like. That can only be good for my statistics on my YouTube channel. And there will be more of these, so I would love you to come along. If anyone else is interested in feedback sessions, then feel free to ask. I don't know how often we'll do them. Generally, it's going to be like a draw along, and there's going to be some live kind of podcast style interview, talking, drawing things happening, which I'm really excited about as well. So if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel, and I would love to share more and more of these drawing sessions with you. And thank you so much to everyone who joined. And thanks again, Ruth. Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks, Penny and Marty. Thanks for joining us in Zoom. Yeah, and have a wonderful weekend. And
Bye now.
we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.